Hey there, super scientists! Wow, I have been loving watching your Flipgrid videos and getting some of your emails showing me the results of your plant experiments. And it's been so great to listen to your different ideas about why the plants grew in different ways than they did. Some of the results that you have were very surprising to some of you. And what we're going to do in this, what I'm going to be doing in this video is I'm going to be trying to explain a little bit about the reasons why we saw some of the things that we saw. Here's a hint. A big part of the reason for why we saw what happened has to do with the seed. So we're going to be talking about why seeds are so special. This is a special kind of seed that we're talking about, different from the ones that were planted, but we're going to be figuring out what's up with seeds, how do they help, what do they do, how do they help plants grow, and what are the things that plants really do need to grow. So you guys did a really great job in the past 2 weeks. We have been, getting our data for our plants. We've been looking at our plants and saying, did they grow? Did they not grow? So we wrote down that data in these notebooks over here. Your notebook should look sort of similar to this guy. Remember, we drew these symbols and diagrams to write down to show our data, which is a really important thing for science. So a cup that we drew that has these little green lines means that the plant grew. If it has an X, it didn't. So in the first cup, for the majority of us, the plant grew. That first cup had water, light, and dirt. Now, I just want to say really quickly, for some of you, it didn't grow. And there's lots of reasons why that might have happened. Maybe you put too much water in, maybe you forgot to water it, or maybe there was a lot of other reasons. Maybe you just got some weird seeds that maybe they were too old or something. Anything is possible. I'm going to be talking about what happened in my plants and what happened in most students' plants. But I just want you guys to be aware that, in science, sometimes people's experiments go a little bit weird. You get unexpected results. And it's really worth thinking for yourself, if I didn't get the same results as Mr. Stewart, what happened? What did I do differently? You can always try and redo the experiment and see what happens the next time. And ask yourself, if you were to redo this experiment, what would you do differently? Okay, so in my first cup, again, we put water, light, and soil. And for the majority of us, including myself, the plant grew at least a little bit in that first cup. In the second cup, we didn't put any water in. And for me, as for most people, that means the seed did not sprout and there was no grass. That data, that kind of tells us that seeds really do need water to grow. Plants need water to grow. In order to start growing plants from a seed, they need water. And what that water will actually do is activate the seed. It's going to get it to start growing. Now, in our third cup, the third cup didn't have any light. It had dirt and water, but no light. So I put a CD case over my cup. Some of you put some of you guys put like books on top or tinfoil, and it grew. But wait a second, I've been growing this for like a month now. It looks pretty different from the first one. We're going to talk about why it still grew without light, and why it's starting to look pretty different. Number 4 grew without soil as well, and it grew. It did sprout, but like we talked about in class, you can see that there's this plant, this cup number 4, that doesn't have soil in it. It looks pretty different from cup number 1. It looks different, and I noticed some different things. When I observe these, I observe something pretty different. And I'm going to put this under the other camera so we can look at it a little bit better. What we see is much more grass growing in cup number 1 that had soil than cup number 2. And, this has been growing for a while. You can see some of my plants, they've started to die. they just don't look as healthy. They don't look as green. So even though they will grow without soil, for many plants, it's very important for them to get some soil because it will help them grow healthier. You know, there are different kinds of plants in the world, and an example of this plant is one that I have been growing. We have been growing in our kitchen without soil at all. This is actually an onion that we're just starting to sprout. And it turns out that you can start to grow these without any dirt whatsoever. This is just water. Those are some plants that can grow with only water, without any dirt at all. So there are different kinds of plants, and some of them don't even need dirt. But this kind of plant, you can grow it without dirt, but they like it better. They grow a little bit better. So what we're going to talk about next is this plant. The one that has not had light, still sprouted, unlike the one that had no water. Still sprouted, but it does not look nearly as healthy as the one that has had light, now that it's been growing for a while. We're going to watch a video. You guys might remember Doug from Mystery Science. He is going to help us understand a little bit why these plants can grow without light. Again, my clue is it has to do with seeds. So we're going to be watching this video from Doug from Mystery Science. He did an experiment with his class where they grew cups very similar to ours. They used a little bit of a different seed than ours. We used a seed for grass seeds. You might have already guessed that. He used a seed for radishes. So their plants are a little bit different than ours, but same idea. So let's watch Doug talk a little bit about what happened in his experiment. He's going to give a little bit of an explanation, and I'll add to that.
There are lots of interesting plants. Plants with colorful flowers, plants that grow food we eat, plants that we can find in the forest, plants that we can grow in our homes. And plants are living things. They're alive, just like animals. Now, they don't have legs, so you won't see them walking around. They don't have mouths or eat food the way we do.
Those are seeds growing.
But they do grow and they move. They have needs, like they need water. Do plants need sunlight to help them grow? We all just did an investigation to find out. Here's what happened in our investigation. We found out that the seeds in the light sprouted and grew. Now they're little baby plants, and each day they grow a little bit more. One day soon they'll be full grown. They're green, and they even have little leaves starting to grow. What about the seeds in the dark? Well, surprisingly, they grew too, actually. Here's what they looked like. Oh, look at them. Now, you might have been surprised to find out that the seeds in the dark did grow. They don't look too different from the ones in the light. They have little leaves too, and they grew just as tall as the seeds in the light. So, wow, does this mean that plants don't need sunlight? Well, let's look closely at them both side by side. Which of these two plants do you think is healthier? The one that grew in the light or the one that grew in the dark? Why do you think that?
So I want you guys to think about that right now. Before I go on to the next video, you can pause it. If you have a parent around, maybe talk about it with them. And you can discuss with your plants instead of the plants that Doug is showing. We talked about this a little bit in class. But think about it. Use your observation skills. How are they different? Okay, I'm going to go on.
If you've heard that plants need sunlight to grow, it might have surprised you that the seeds in the dark grew. What is going on here? Well, you could find out if you kept trying to grow the plants in the dark. If you want to do that and find out without me telling you what happens, you can stop this video. But if you want to find out now, I'll go ahead and show you. This is a sped up video taken by scientists that shows what happened to some of the seeds that are left in the dark. If we keep a plant in the dark for a few weeks, pretty soon it will begin to die. But what if we let the radish seeds keep growing in the sunlight? Well, this is what we get. You can see that these grew up to become healthy plants. So plants definitely need sunlight in order to grow. Sunlight and water are both needs that plants have. You might have noticed that the plants in the dark weren't turning green like the ones in the light were. That's a sign that they're not healthy. Almost all plants have some parts that are green, usually their leaves. In fact, next time you're walking around and looking at plants, that's a sign you can look for to guess if the plant is growing well. If you have any plants at home and you notice they start to lose their green color, it might mean they're not staying healthy. Maybe they're not getting enough water or not getting enough sunlight. Hey, that gives me an idea. What do you think will happen to the radish seeds that were growing in the dark if we now put them in the sunlight? Try this out when the video is over. Keep them watered and you'll find out what happens after they've been in the sun for a day. You can even draw a picture on a new worksheet to
So we're going to stop it there. You can totally do that experiment if you want to. If your plants are still alive that have been growing in the dark, if you want to take them out of the dark, take off your CD case or your book and see what happens when they grow. I want you guys to, though, I promised to talk a little bit about seeds. Doug started to get there, but I think we ought to talk a little bit more about why seeds are so important. What they do to help the plants grow. So what we're going to do is something called a seed dissection. A dissection is just when you take something apart in order to figure out what's inside and how it works. Some of you guys have done dissections with me before, of animals, but we're going to be doing of another living thing, which is plants and specifically seeds. So you guys can do this experiment as well. If you want to get it ready and pause this video and wait to start it, you can do that and get the materials ready. Or you can watch me do my dissection and then do your own dissection. What you're going to need is beans. So I put beans in an Altoid can of most of your kits. Those are in bag number 5. You might also not have an Altoid can in bag number 5, but just a bag with various seeds inside of them. And you guys might not know this, but beans are actually a kind of seed as well. And those are the seeds that we're going to dissect today because they're bigger than the grass seeds that we planted before. Those were really little seeds, which grew into these ones. But beans are better for dissection because they're a little bit bigger. Did you even know that beans were seeds? Well, they are, and we're going to talk about why they're so yummy. It has to do with what seeds do and what they're for. So to get this experiment ready, what you need to do is you need to leave your beans in a cup of water for about a day. So take a few of the beans. You don't need to use all of them. I used 5 different beans that I put in my cup of water. You only really need 1 actually, but I wanted to show you some different kinds of beans. So let them soak in the water for about a day, and then you'll be ready to do this experiment. Don't leave them there for longer than about a day. I made the mistake of doing that, and it actually gets kind of gross and starts to smell bad. Right now it's fine, but if you leave it for too long, it starts to not be super nice. So I had to redo these because those other beans were pretty gross. So once you have it soaked for about a day, then take your beans out of the water, and I want you to compare your beans to the other ones that were not soaked. So I'm looking at these 2 beans, and I want to see how are they different, how are they similar. And when I compare these beans, I notice something. I notice like this one and this one, same kind of bean. Look at how much bigger it is. God, so much bigger. That's something that I'm observing. Same with this one. Wow, look at the difference between some of these beans that were soaked versus that were not soaked. Huge difference how much bigger they are. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking these seeds apart. So to take this bean, this seed apart, what you're going to do is you're going to, and once it's soaked for about a day, you're going to be able to peel off the outer part, which is the skin. One of the things that I love about dissections is you can tell how you can kind of start to figure out what the different parts are for. This outer part, this thing that's called a seed coat, it's to help protect the seed so that, it doesn't get taken apart by a curious human. And then, once it's taken apart, you should be able to split your bean in half pretty easily. Again, soaking it in water is going to make that really easy to split it in half. Then you should see something like this. Now, I want to talk about what these different parts of the seed of the bean is. It actually looks like there's not too much going on for much of this bean. All of this part over here, there's not that much there, right? Well, what all of this is, all of the stuff over here, this big white, light brown part, is actually going to be food for the seed. And this part right here is what will grow into the new bean plant. This is called the embryo. It is what will actually grow into the plant. And the bottom part, this part over here, is going to turn into the roots of the plant. This part is going to turn into the leaves. You can actually see some that on my bean, and maybe on yours when you dissect it, the leaves it looks almost like the shape of a leaf. Those are going to turn into the leaves of the plant. The middle part will turn into the stem. What all the rest of this bean is doing is it's giving food to the baby plant. And it needs that food because plants get their food from water, light, and air. Water, light, and air. Do beans have access to water, light, and air all at once when they're first planted in the ground? Well, no, they're not. Oftentimes, they'll land in a dry spot of the ground, and they won't have water, and so they're not sprouting. Until they get water, and they start to swell up like this bean over here that I soaked, it will not grow. And underground, it definitely doesn't have light either. So it needs this food. This is like its starter food to grow until it gets big enough that it can start making food itself from water, light, and air. And we know that here are my plants. This is the one that was covered up, and it's dead. I've been growing this for about a month, and look at how it's all brown, and it has not been getting any light. It hasn't been able to grow make food for itself. It ran out of the food that came with it in its bean. I'm going to show this process to you guys. Let's watch a video really quickly of a bean actually growing. So this video that we're about to watch, right now we're just looking at a picture of it, is of a seed that's growing with time sped up really fast. You can see what day it is down here. Here's day 1 when the bean was just planted and water has been given to it. Notice it's buried in the soil. Light is up here. So right now there's no light for the bean. It's going to use this food that's inside of it to start growing. And we can watch that happen. There's the root that's starting to shoot out of it. And you can see it growing down, stretching down. It's actually looking for water. And that's why the root is spreading out. It's looking for water, which is pretty cool. More roots are starting to shoot out. More roots. Look at what's happening to the bean. There's another part growing out of it. The stem. It's using food inside of that bean for its energy. Wow, and it's broken through the ground now, and we can see it continues to be using energy from the bean, but now there's a leaf. I'm going to pause there for a second. There's a leaf there now, and that leaf is going to start collecting sunlight. You can see the bean, the original bean, is pretty shriveled up. The part that had the energy stored in it originally is pretty shriveled up because now this plant has light and it can start making food for itself. It doesn't need that food that was in the bean anymore. I'm going to keep on playing. We're going to see what happens. Wow, it's growing taller and taller. Isn't that cool how it's like moving around? We don't usually see plants move because they do it so slowly. But they do move and they grow and they get bigger and bigger. Wow, this is so cool. It's day 13. Bet you it's about a foot or two high right now, which is pretty crazy how it grew from something so small into something that's getting bigger and bigger. So, as we finish up watching this video of this plant grow, I want you guys to think about how can we make sense of the fact that, though for some of you, the plants without light grew really tall. Well, they grew out of the ground and they kept on growing in search of light. They thought that they were down here, down in the soil, and they were growing taller and taller to try and find the light because they need light to make their food. So it's been so much fun getting to grow these plants and think about how to do experiments with you all and learn about how plants work, why seeds are so important. You have one last assignment on plants, and then we're going to be done with plants for a little bit of time. What I'd like you to do is to do the seed dissection that I showed you. So get your seeds out, put them in water, take them apart, try and find what the different parts of the bean are, and then make a flip grid showing me your bean and explaining, so I know that you understood what we were talking about in this video. How was it that some people's plants were able to grow without light? And remember, the secret is in the beans. Bonus, or in the seeds, sorry. Beans are a kind of seed. And bonus question, why are beans, a kind of seed, a kind of really big seed, so tasty? I also want to let you guys know that there's another thing you could do with your beans after you've soaked them. Don't take them apart if you want to do this. You could soak an extra bean or two. Don't take it apart. Put it on a wet paper towel and keep it wet. You could put it in another cup, put it on a wet paper towel, keep it wet, the paper towel. The plant will actually start growing out of the bean. You'll be able to see it start growing out of the bean. So I highly encourage you to do that experiment. You could also make a flip grid showing what happened there and explaining how did that work, what's going on, and see how much you can grow it. Maybe you'll be able to grow a whole bean plant. So thank you guys. I look forward to seeing your flip grid. The password for the flip grid is the same as the password to get into the student corner of stuartscience.com. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the treasure hunt. You also can log into your flip grid using your Google accounts. Message me, send me an email if you have any trouble. Bye, stay curious.